Hello, everybody. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Valero Texas Open Initial Research Show. Lot of things to cover tonight, but first, have one shout out to give. Pop's Call had a top 10 lineup in a tiers contest this past weekend, so congratulations on your success. It was a tale of two different tournaments, a little bit of good and a whole lot of bad at the match play. Followed up with a lot of good and a little bad at the Corrales. Unfortunately, the lot of bad tournament was the more lucrative tournament of the week. So a slightly losing week for yours truly. So we're going to try to get on the right foot for the week before the Masters. That's right, the Masters is 2 weeks away. A lot to look forward to. A lot of the players playing this week trying their last-ditch effort to qualify, probably most notably Ricky Fowler. But a little bit of success, as I mentioned. DFS wasn't too terrible. Very, very close on some outright wagers at the Corrales. Didn't come through. So if you had success, please jump in chat. Let me know how it went. Would love to be able to shout you all out. But we're going to move forward to the Valero Texas Open, so let's do it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter gambler and a much better DFS player. Go check them out. It's simply well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to all of my social media. This is Twitter and Instagram, where I will certainly be posting some research around the Valero Texas Open this week. And I will be posting some research or some interesting stuff to note for baseball, as opening day is Thursday. So I have a lot to announce towards the end of the show, or at the end of the show, regarding my schedule coming up. So be on the lookout for that. If you want to see the research that I do, give me a follow at those two places. Twitter is also where I post my betting card every week. So if you want to see my betting cards, give me a follow over at Twitter. And then the link to my Twitch channel is also in the description. This is where I do all of my in-depth research, which reminds me that tomorrow will not have a stream in the morning. I have a couple of phone calls that need to take place. So I will make that up on Tuesday. Tuesday morning, I will have my research stream, if you will. And we're also going to be doing some baseball starting this week. So a lot of exciting stuff coming up. So if you want to see the in-depth research that I do, whether it's for golf or baseball, consider coming on by, giving me a follow. It's much more laid back. The music's going in the background. Also can jump into some gaming and other things. So if you're interested in that content, give me a follow over there. And then finally, we're live. Chat's open. As I mentioned, I want to hear how you all did this past weekend. Did you have Sam Burns at the match play? I certainly had him a little bit, not nearly enough to cover the Alex Noren debacle. Kuchar played well. I mentioned JT Poston, so I had some good recommendations, but Kisner and Noren and Hatton, these players really sunk a lot of my lineups. And then over at the Corrales, I had a lot of success, but I did not have the winner in Matt Wallace, Wyndham Clark, Thomas Dietrich, a lot of good over there as well. Didn't have Wallace, didn't have Tyler Duncan, but it was a successful week in terms of the Corrales. So let me know how your weekend went, and also what you're looking forward to for the Valero. Do you have any players in mind early in this week that you are focusing on? What kind of statistics you think are going to be the most important at TPC San Antonio? All that good stuff. So let's do it. Let's do our initial research for the 2023 Valero Texas Open. And we're going to start, as we normally do, on a Sunday evening over at the GCSIA Tournament Fact Sheet. We are in San Antonio, Texas, at TPC San Antonio, the Oaks course. The architect is Greg Norman. And TBC San Antonio Oaks course is long, again, like we had for the Corrales. Not as long as the Corrales. Corrales being 7,700 yards. This is just over 7,400 at 7,438. The stimp is pretty darn slow. Wind is generally a factor here at the Oaks course. It is pretty wide open, very exposed, and with the amount of wind they generally get in Texas, this is a tournament not too dissimilar from a lot of your Caribbean style events where they have to keep the greens pretty darn slow or else they would be pretty unplayable. But the Oaks course, par 72 at 7,438 yards. So we'll be looking at some long course metrics. Sometimes the course will drop under 7,400, but for the most part, it is a long course. Greens, a little bit larger than average at 6,400 square feet. Quite a bit of fairway, 35 acres of fairway, and you see the note down here, the average landing area, about 25 to 30 yards. That's pretty wide for the PGA Tour. Not a lot of rough, and it's not very difficult to play out of. There's only 3 holes with water in play, so again, a very wide open course for or on the docket this week. The greens. This is the last tournament on the schedule that has the Poa Trivialis overseed. It generally it's listed as Bermuda, but the Bermuda is usually dormant, so it is actually a Poa Trivialis overseed. Again, we've been focusing on that quite a bit lately, from the Valspar to the Players. We just had it at match play, again with Sam Burns winning. No surprise there. So a lot of putting metrics that we've been looking at recently. Fairways and rough are rye and fescue. Again, the rough a little over 2 inches long, so not really all that thick and difficult to play out of. The notes here do have that a warmer than usual February and March has awakened the underlying Bermuda. Now, I still don't think we are going to be looking at Bermuda. I think we'll be looking at Poa Trivialis as we have with the others. But if I do see some notes regarding that the Bermuda is starting to take over, I'll let you know. But for right now, at least on a Sunday evening, we're looking at Poa Trivialis. That is really what I have in terms of a factual look at San Antonio for you, or the Oaks course in San Antonio. Long course, pretty slow greens generally, just because of the amount of wind. Poa Trivialis, the last course we'll be looking at Poa Trivialis, at least for a long while, and large greens. So, we'll move on over to Fantasy National, and I think we are far enough along in 2023 where we can start looking at some, or the timeline starting in 2023, at least for no filters. You know, if we're just looking at strokes gain approach, off a tee, or anything just in a generic sense, I think we're going to start looking at just 2023. With long course metrics, we're definitely going to have to go back to 2022. Maybe some difficult as well. Anytime we're adding filters, we might have to go back to 2022. But as a default, I think I'm going to start using just 2023. So, since the start of this calendar year, the top players in the field this week have been Chris Kirk, Keith Mitchell, Terrell Hatton, Ricky Fowler, Ben Griffin, Siwoo Kim, Nick Taylor, Eric Cole, Ben Martin, Taylor Montgomery, Ben On, and Sam Ryder. Akshay Bhatia and his special temporary membership is here this week as well. Hideki, although I would be quite surprised if he plays, considering he cited a neck injury and conceded the last day at match play for the pool play. I would be surprised if he plays. He played this last year and withdrew in the middle of the second round. So that's always going to be something to keep an eye on. Some other notable players: Thomas Detry, Matt Kuchar. Let's see, scrolling on down, Sepp Straka, a winner on tour. your winner in Corrales, or at the Corrales. I just saw him, Matt Wallace. There he is. Corey Connors, a former champion here. So a pretty decent field for the Valero the week before the Masters. Again, we're not going to do anything with putting. I will focus on that tomorrow whenever I have the time to set all of the filters and whatnot. So let's go to the Fantasy National course breakdown for the Oaks course in San Antonio. And first thing I like to do is find the 9th and 10th most difficult hole, see where par falls. Well, we see the 10th is still slightly over par, 11th is slightly over par, 12th barely at 100th, and then 13th. So in between the 12th and 13th most difficult holes is where par is. However, I will say this is a little bit easier than what that is telling you. Just due to the fact that the par 5s are pretty gettable here. Now, you do have a long par 5 that plays to about 2/10 over par. The easiest hole in the course is 4/10 under par, quarter of a shot under par. Now, there are quite a few holes that can bite you. About 3 of them that are at a quarter of a shot over par, 1500ths, but you quickly get into the 1/10 or so. Generally, the course plays to average. I would think it's going to play on the slightly on the easier side of average, but that will depend on the wind, and we'll take a look at wind starting tomorrow throughout the week. Evening, Joanne. Mini cash, not all that great. Hoping for a good week. Yeah, you were correct. I was along your same lines in the Kuchar belief. This week at match play, he played very, very well. I was really hoping he would prevail in his match with Jason Day. It was a very good match, day one. I was nowhere near Jason Day, so that really hurt some of my lineups as well at the match play. Plus the aforementioned disaster that Noren was. Again, I knew it was a risk to take Noren, but it was one I was willing to take with the previous match play record, trying to get some leverage around Scheffler. Don't get me wrong, I still use Scotty Scheffler a little bit because, I mean, it is his home course, it is match play, but Noren didn't play well. Kisner really surprised me in not playing well, so they really tanked a lot of my lineups around, whatever good recommendations I had, say a Matt Kuchar, a JT Poston I was pretty high on. Sam Burns I mentioned Mackenzie Hughes as well. However, I didn't use nearly enough of them in my lineups to offset the wrong. And then the Corrales, while successful, the match play was certainly the more lucrative of the two tournaments happening this week. So whatever winnings I had at the Corrales didn't make up for the match play. But yes, we are going to try to bounce back, if you will, and get on a winning streak or start a winning streak for the week before the Masters. So unfortunately, sounds like you and I had a similar style week, so we will try to turn it around. But thanks for jumping in chat. We, again, coming to the scorecard, it will play to about average. Again, I think it plays a little bit easier, but that will depend on the wind. We look at strokes gained by shot type here at the Oaks, and putting and approach pretty darn close. No real surprise. Again, with this being a long course, around the green does make some amount of sense. If the greens are going to be difficult to hit, then you might have to rely on getting up and down. Off the tee, with the fairways being as wide as they are, fairways I don't think are going to be a big factor, but we'll investigate that. But there's a look at your strokes gained by shot type for the top 10s. We move to the top 5s. Putting really takes a leap in terms of importance. The approach right at a 1. The off the tee distances itself from around the green. But the winners, you'll see that strokes gained approach is really the be-all, end-all. This is typically a ball striker's course. Again, if you're winning the tournament, you're going to be making putts, so there's no real surprise there. But you look at some of these past winners. Corey Connors is a previous winner here. His ball striking, needs no explanation. Jordan Spieth in 2021, while still very solid short game, his iron play really improved right before he had won. So we're going to see a pattern of performance from these winners and what their approach game was like leading into the week of the Valero. So again, for winners, I truly do believe it is a ball striking course. You see the off the tee, almost 9/10, and then the approach pulls away from the putting. So we'll reset this for the top 10s. Look at average strokes gained by hole by par. You see the par 5s outweighing the other two by a pretty significant margin. The par 3s very, very deflated in terms of importance for your top 10 finishers. For your top 5s, the par 3s do catch up to the par 4s a little bit, but you see just the sheer importance of the par 5s here. And then for your winners, par 3s actually overtake the par 4s, but still come nowhere close to the par 5s. So we'll be looking at a lot of par 5 metrics this week, especially since the easiest hole, 4/10, the third easiest, the fifth easiest, and the fourth easiest. So you do have a couple of par 4s in here that sneak into the top 5 in terms of ease. The very short par 4 17th plays to a quarter of a shot under par, and then another very short par 4 at 401, the par 4 5th plays about a 10th of a shot under par. These par 3s, they get increased in importance for the winners because they're pretty difficult. You've got the 8th most difficult hole, but a 171 can be pretty challenging. Then a long par 3 at 207, a very long 241 plays to the 5th hardest, and then the easiest par 3 is actually on the easier side, plays right to par. But the par 3s will be somewhat important as well. We move down to hole composition. You see the par 3s are evenly spread out, at least on the scorecard, one each in the ranges from 150 to 225 plus. You see that there. You do have the very short, semi-drivable par 4 17th, 347 on the scorecard. That would all depend on wind, direction, strength, and all that. But that's why I say semi-drivable. You do have a bevy of par 4s from 400 to 450, a few from 450 to 5, but majority of your par 4s are on the shorter end. We saw the 401. You also have a 410, a 405, 403. So a lot of shorter par 4s, and we'll see if the 400 to 450 or maybe even the 350 to 4, even though there are 0 on the scorecard, we'll see if the 350 to 4 might be a little bit of a factor as well. And then the 4 par 5s are evenly split, fairly long, and that's where the length of the course really comes in. You have 2 from 550 to 6 and 2 from 600 to 650. Your approach shot distribution, the majority of approach shots here come from 150 to 175, but pretty evenly split throughout the course. So I'm not sure if we're going to be looking at a specific length of approach shot. And with the greens being so big or bigger than the tour average, this might be a week where total procs comes in. Historic cut line, it has gotten easier in recent years. Last year was at even par. 3 years ago it was even par. Now in 2021 it was +3. A lot of that had to do with the wind. But you can see if the wind really does pick up, it can get very difficult. Again, the course is very exposed. But generally, at least, we'll go to about 2016. It's hovered in this +1, maybe +2 range in here. So that would certainly put it in average territory. A little bit more on the difficult end. I still think, again, I'll keep saying it, I still think it's going to be a little bit on the easier side because of the winning scores that we see here. But we will take a look at Win Finder throughout the week starting tomorrow. Scoring distribution, birdies and bogeys, pretty even. 17.5%, 17.3, so a slight lean towards the birdies, but the doubles bar is pretty high, and the eagles bar is non-existent. So more scores over par than under par. Accuracy, this is a little bit misleading. Again, this course is so wide open that players are not too concerned with finding the fairway. The rough is not difficult to play out of, and you saw just how short some of these par fours are, and you also get a lot of run out here. So accuracy is going to show that it's not easy to hit the fairways. It's not that the players generally aren't concerned with hitting the fairways, and we can see that in the distance, 285.5 here versus 283. So a couple yards more than the average tour event. Doesn't sound like a lot. It's certainly on the upper end for the average driving distance. Green regulation percentage, even though these greens are so large, they are difficult to hit. One, again, the course length puts that into consideration, and the fact that the wind is usually a big factor here also contributes to this. So greens might actually be something that we want to look at. We'll take a look at that in Microsoft Excel later, at least get our initial idea about it. But greens are pretty difficult to hit. But again, the rough is not very difficult to play out of, so players that are having to scramble are generally more successful here than the average tour event, meaning it is easier here than the average tour event. 3 putts, roughly about the same as the average tour event. So again, whether that is in wind affecting that or not used to slow greens, the 3 putts might be something we want to look at. We took a look at distance, and proximity is more than 1.5 feet or right at 1.5 feet further away than the average tour event. So really does make me think that we might want to look at proximity this week. But there's a look at TPC San Antonio, the Oaks course, from a scorecard and graphical view. Now we'll move on over. Actually, let's go to the historic conditions just to reiterate some of these talking points very quickly. Last year played completely to average. Now in 2021 it was pretty difficult, but 2019 every single round was easy. Then you had average and then easy every year before that. So it has gotten a little bit more difficult over the years, say since about 2018. I generally remember these types of scores. So perhaps it is getting more difficult. The greens have always been classified as Bermuda, but again, the Bermuda is dormant. So we'll be looking at Poa Trivialis. Hitting the fairways have been rated as difficult. Again, we talked about it. Players just don't really care about finding the fairway too much here. The rough has generally been short, although last year it got lengthened to average. The course always long. It will fall under 7,300 yards from time to time, but generally is over 7,400. And you can see the wind always a factor, usually moderate, even up into the windy conditions. So there's a look at the tournament factors. Now we'll go to the player page view, strokes gained page view. First thing we want to do, or that I like to do, let's just kind of take a look at our top strokes gained approach players since the start of 2023. Again, we saw in the graphs that strokes gained approach was the most important factor for your winners. So since the start of 2023, your top strokes gained approach players have been Terrell Hatton, Kevin Roy, Ricky Fowler, Scott Piercy, Chris Kirk, Matt Wallace, Ben Martin, Sepp Straka, Satoshi Kodaira, Eric Cole, and Ryan Palmer. All right, Ryan Palmer, a Texas native, probably no surprise. Ben Martin's been playing very well. Matt Wallace coming off the win at the Corrales. Ricky and his resurgence. Terrell Hatton's been very good lately. So makes a whole lot of sense here. Of course, Chris Kirk, win at Valspar. Piercy is very good in the win. So starting to see a little bit of a narrative here. Let's take a look at off the tee. It was a little bit more important than around the green, and I still think this is a ball strikers course, or favors ball strikers. So your top off the tee players this calendar year have been Luke List, Keith Mitchell, Hayden Buckley, Terrell Hatton, Tyler Duncan, Corey Connors, a former champion here, MJ Duffy, Davis Thompson, Cam Davis, and Carson Young. I think the only other thing that I might want to look at in terms of a strokes gained page view, let's take a look at long courses. And this certainly backfired for me for the Corrales, and that was one of the reasons why I wasn't on Matt Wallace last week for the Corrales, as he had generally struggled on long courses, at least since 2022. But if memory serves, he'd actually been pretty solid starting in 2021, and had been pretty poor lately. So perhaps this is something that I need to readjust and perhaps bring in a little bit more historical data. So let's go back to the beginning of 2021 for long courses. And your top players when a course has been long in the field this week at the Valero: Chris Kirk, Corey Connors, Nate Lashley, Nicholas Echeverria, Ryan Palmer, Andrew Putnam, Thomas Detry, Emiliano Grillo, Terrell Hatton, and Hideki. Probably all I'm going to want to do in terms of a strokes gained page view this evening, I'm going to remove the long course filter. I'm going to bring this back to the beginning of 2023. Graphically, we saw just how important the par fives are here. So we'll take a quick look at par fives and your top performers in the field this week: Patton Gazire, Kevin Chappell, Terrell Hatton, Nate Lashley, Garrick Higo, Dylan Fratelli, Carl Yuan, Matt Kuchar, Ryan Palmer, and Augusto Nunez. So early on in your research or in your considerations, whether it be for wagering or early leans in DFS, make sure you give these players some extra thought, as they have generally been the best at par fives, and the par fives are extremely important here at the Oaks course. All right. Last thing in Fantasy National we want to cover, let's take a look at the Tournament History tab or Strokes Gained Total tab and take a look at some of our top performers here at the Valero Texas Open. Again, our defending champion is JJ Spawn. He had never really played it great. He played it okay. 2 for 4. He did have a top 30 a few years back, but then wins last year. Corey Connors, winner in 2019. Andrew Landry, winner in 2018. Kevin Chappell in 2017. 2021 was Spieth, who's not here. 2021 was Spieth, who's not here. In the past 5 iterations, and I say iterations, not years, because 2020 being the disaster it was, the tournament was canceled. So the past 5 iterations of the Valero Texas Open, our top stroke gain total player is Corey Connors, 4 for 4, a win, a top 15, 2 other pretty good finishes. Siwoo Kim has played this very well, 5 for 5. Charlie Hoffman, very, very good here with 2 runner-ups. They did miss the cut last year, but he has 2 runner-ups and 2 other made cuts. Aaron Baddeley, always very good in the wind. Makes a lot of sense. Matt Kuchar, very good lately. 3 straight top 12s, a top 10 and a runner-up last year. Some other players of note: Party Marty Laird, Kevin Streelman, been good. Lucas Glover, 3 for 3 the past 3 years, nothing outside of a top 20. Kevin Chappell's 3 for 4. Let's see, Chris Kirk, 3 for 5, a little bit all or nothing in the sense that you have 2 top 10s, but you also have 2 missed cuts. Ryan Palmer, Texas native, pretty good here, 3 for 5. Andrew Putnam, 3 for 3. No, excuse me, Dylan Fratelli, 3 for 3. Apologies. That's Dylan Fratelli, 3 for 3. Ricky, 2 for 3. 2 top 20s and a missed cut last year. The other end of the spectrum, players that haven't played the Oaks course very well. Tyler Duncan, a very promising showing at the Corrales. He's 1 for 4 here. Luke Donald, 1 for 4. We have Nick Watney, 1 for 5. Sam Ryder, 2 for 4. Others here, Kramer Hickok, 0 for 3. Ryan Armour, 1 for 4. Stefan Yeager, 0 for 3. Hank Lebiota made the cut at Corrales. I was very high on him. He kind of let me down. He does have a top 20, but then 2 straight missed cuts. Austin Cook, 1 for 4. So there's a look at some of the players that haven't played well at the Oaks course. All right, I think that's a pretty good segue to move on over to Microsoft Excel. First thing we'll do, we'll look at the comparison course and take a look at how the Oaks course plays in terms of raw data and against other full field courses. We saw that the strokes gained approach was outweighing everything else, showing that here, and you do have a low outlier. In fact, you have a low outlier in terms of ball striking in general last year. If we take a look at the Valero versus other full field courses, the off the tee is still more important slightly, even with that low outlier included. When you remove the low outlier, I'm sure the strokes gained approach will probably be over 5% more important. Now the around the green is showing that it is very, very important. I can't say that that's a very high outlier, but that is a pretty big number in general for around the green. So perhaps around the green might be a little bit more important than I'm giving it credence. And then putting has been very consistent minus 2021, and it is right at average. So okay, perhaps something to do with putting, but again, we'll be taking a look at the Poa Trivialis and the players that putt that the best starting tomorrow. Moving to driving, distance and fairways and whatnot. Distance, not really a big deal here at all. Fairways, it showed that it was right at full field course average, but that's a pretty high outlier, so it's going to be negative. Greens is actually the thing that I think is going to be what you want to focus on. Even though it's saying it's 5% less important, I just, with the greens being difficult to hit, whether that be wind or wind and the length of the course, I am early leaning towards greens and regulation being the factor that we want to look at from this tab this week. Look at scoring. Again, not a whole lot of eagles, minus 2019, but not a whole lot of eagles. And it's showing that it's more important. That is not a very high number. So I don't want to look at eagles. We saw just how few there are here at the Oaks. Birdies versus bogeys, however, does look like the birdies are holding an advantage in terms of the raw data. They're both not as important as the full field course, so this is a situation where going through the previous leaderboards tomorrow on the Data Dive show will really be beneficial. See what our top, what our winners have been doing, our top 10s and 20s and whatnot. No real lean so far in terms of scoring early this week. We saw that the par 3s got more important the higher you climbed on the leaderboard. Looks like the most important range by a clear margin is the 175 to 200. So if we scan over, in fact, the par 3s in total, or in totality, pretty low in importance, but the 175 to 200 are important. The vision will be skewed, and I apologize, but let's go back to the breakdown here. Yeah, you can see the yardages at least. So in terms of par 3s, 171, you can easily see that getting moved into the 175 to 200. 207 could be moved into the 175 to 200, absolutely. Now the 241 probably will never move into that 175 to 200 range. And the 183 is pretty solidly planted in there. So, okay, yeah, you could. I can see a reason that the 175 to 200 would be the most important, and the data is showing that or backing that up. So, okay, perhaps that is something to focus on this week. Moving to the par 4s, 450 to 5 is the most important, but that is a very large outlier. I mean, it gets pretty close to the others if you remove that. Let's see. This hasn't been all that terribly consistent. This has been nowhere consistent. Par 4s haven't been very consistent here at the Oaks course. That is a very low outlier, though, however. So if we remove that outlier, the par 4s, slightly more important. I don't know. I don't really have a strong lean in terms of par 4s right now. I thought maybe it'd be the 350 to 4s, considering the bevy of very short par 4s, in the 400, 4.0 to 415 range. But it's data-wise, it's showing that it's really not all that important. So it might be just par 4s in general. Might just be par 4s in general. And again, that's a low outlier, so when you remove that, it gets more important. Par 5s, very, very important here at the Oaks course. We can see that they're 12% more important already. The range looks, again, these are the two ranges that have holes on the scorecard that measure to them. The highest raw number is 550 to 6. Okay? Again, only 1 year that a par 5 actually fell under 550 yards. So we are going to completely ignore that anyway. I don't want to delete it, but we're just going to ignore it. Perhaps 550 to 6 is where we want to put our focus to start this week on the par 5s, but it very well could be just par 5s in totality. Proximity, yeah, look at this. There's a very low outlier there in proximity, and proximity is already more important. So my initial thought process seems to be on the right line of thinking there. You remove that, this is going to be, more than 40% more important than the average full field course. Now, the majority of approach shots here came from 150 to 175. It's showing that it's actually the least important of the individual ranges. A very low outlier here, which would make a lot of sense. If the par 5s are so darn important, then 200 plus would make a lot of sense. And that's, darn, it's just right off your screen. It's 13%. So 200 plus might be something. That's a very, very low outlier as well. So these longer approach shots might be something. You can see it in relation to the full field course, average full field course. So not sure if I have a strong lean for proximity. Again, we'll be looking at that tomorrow in the data that I've shown the previous leaderboards. See if there is a range that sticks out among the top performers. But my initial thought process seems to be right in that total prox is going to be something. All right, let's end off the show this evening looking at the early look file. And again, this is just the strokes gained tab, or the tournament history tab in Fantasy National, brought over to Microsoft Excel in terms of broken out by their performance in whatever statistic. So again, this is only going back to 2018. So Kevin Chappell's win here is not factored in. I only like to go back 5 years. So Kevin Chappell's winning year is not factored into this. So the most you'll see is 4. But let's go ahead and filter on the players that have played this 3 or 4 years and see what they've been really, really doing well. So the players who have played it consistently and played it well: Kevin Streelman, Lucas Glover, Kuchar, Connor, Siwoo. Anybody who has averaged, let's just go to a top. How many is this? This is 11. Let's do a top 40. A 1.4 and off the tee, pretty strong. Approach should be the highest, although Bo Hostler and Richie Werenski have a pretty bad number there. And that's still a 1.5. If you remove those two, if we just want to look at the top 35s, this is almost a 2.0. And only one player is negative in terms of strokes gained approach. So, again, just the emphasis on being a ball striking course. Same really for off the tee. If you do this, the top 35, only one player negative. And this is a 1.7. Now, data-wise, around the green looked like something. You got a couple of players here that are really performing well. Kevin Streelman, Lucas Glover, Aaron Baddeley. That is what he is most known for anyway. Siwoo's been very good around the green here. This is a 1.2, a little bit lower than the ball striking, but look at this. The putting of the players who have consistently played this tournament and played it well, you have to come down to Lonto Griffin, who's averaged a 48th place finish before you get anybody that is negative in terms of putting. So it's looking like putting is a consistently important factor here. That's why we'll take a very long look at Poa Trivialis putting tomorrow in the data dive. Moving to the driving statistics again for the players who have played continuously or consistently here at the Oaks course. Distance just not a factor. You see all the orange and yellow here. Really not a lot of green until you get to Charlie Hoffman. So distance not really a factor. Again, for the same top 33 or so, or players that have averaged at 33rd, fairways 2.7, higher than what I would have thought. Greens is a 2.8. Okay. All right. I still think it's greens. Scoring. See if we can't get a lean early on. See, we got birdies and then birdies. Birdies there. Birdies there. For your elite finishers, it looks like birdies gained. This is a 1.9. This is a 2.3. So perhaps the more consistent finishers are in the bogeys avoided, but your elite finishers seem to be doing better at birdies. Corey Connors, a former winner here, more in the birdies. In fact, let's see if we can't find the winners here. So there's Corey Connors. We're looking for JJ Spawn's another winner here. I have to scroll down for you all on that. He is more in the birdies. Spieth's not here. So it was Connors in 2019. Chappell, who was between Chappell and Connors? Damn it. I'm going to have to cheat. 2018 winner. Oh, Landry. That's right. No wonder I don't remember it because it was random. Andrew Landry. He's going to be pretty bad because he's missed the cut several times. He's more in the bogeys, as you can see here. So, okay. Nothing solid to go on, I don't think, yet with the scoring. We'll have to take a look into that tomorrow. Par 3s. This is a 0.7. Not all that high. A 4.1. That's astronomical. And then a 1.6. So, yeah, par 5s are still dominating the par 4s, or the par 3s. But the par 4s have been something Very important for the players who have consistently played it well here. And it looked like they were getting deflated or mitigated in importance. But you see the prevalence of green again in that 175 to 200. So it does appear that the 175 to 200 is the most important par 3 range by a pretty significant margin. So maybe we're just looking at 175 to 200. Par 4s, more in the 400 to 500 area. Let's see, you've got a 1.3 here, a 1.7. So that's what graphically it was showing too. The 450 to 5s were more important. Par 5s, this was the most important range, at least in terms of raw data. Getting backed up to, you only have one player that's negative in this range. Okay. But most important, or most interesting to me, look at the success of these players and their strong proximity total numbers. Now, it does fall off with Siwoo, to be fair, but your top 4 here, anybody who's averaged a top 20 the past 4 years, those are some very, very good proximity total numbers. So we'll definitely be scrutinizing that tomorrow in the Data Dive show. I will bring back everybody who has played just to give you an idea of some performances. Again, I don't like to look or include Brendan Todd or Matthias Schwab when I'm trying to discern what's important. They've only played here once. You can argue to include players like Keith Mitchell, maybe, who's played it 2 of the 4 times, but I just wanted to see players who've played it consistently, more than 50%. But I believe that is what I have for you all in terms of an initial research show tonight. Joanne, thanks for jumping in chat. Hopefully we are going to get back on the right track and add to our bankroll before the Masters. So thanks to everyone who tuned in, watched, listened, who supports the channel. Really appreciate it. Reminder that there will be no research stream tomorrow morning. I have a couple of phone calls that really need to take place, so I will make that up Tuesday morning at 10:30. By that time, we'll have done the Data Dive show. I'll probably be making my mixed condition model, so I can you can get an inside look at how I go about making my mixed condition model Tuesday morning over on Twitch, all of that stuff. And again, baseball starts this week, so we are going to be starting some baseball-related research over on Twitch as well, and I'll be posting some interesting findings for baseball starting this week on Twitter and Instagram, as well as some interesting Valero facts as well. So a lot to come this week. Exciting times for calls. I'm looking forward to it. And hopefully you all are as well. For all of the wagers that you placed this past weekend for the match play and the Corrales, for all the DFS contests you entered this past weekend at the match play and for the Corrales, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive show, may all your bets be profitable.